Chapter 13. A Secret Revealed. Jamai flipped pages 186 and 187 to 188, the beginning of the next chapter, and then he looked up at the rough ceiling of his jail room. His eyes then swept the gray back wall, which had the door with that large padlock hanging from its rusty latch. He exhaled slowly and lowered his head again to the book, and then resumed reading his godfather's story silently. Patient reader, Angel Saintiana gradually lowered our heightened concerns for the two young men as she continued her story, saying, Brian drove the minibus off the main road and entered Blade Town. Joey noticed that the road was scanty and narrow and loose in some areas, and that potholes were plenty. But as was proven just a minute previously, Brian was a careful navigator. And so, Joey became relaxed again, and he gazed into the horizon ahead, musing. It's a dry day so far, and we should have a lovely sunset too. Brian replied flatly, True. But too bad it's the last sunset for millions of people around the world, preacher. Joey narrowed his eyes. You know, Brian, that's actually a great point, a very sermonic one too. Every creature on Earth has an expiration date. And interestingly too, even a name has a time to die. Brian frowned. What do you mean? Joey swallowed hard. The dreaded moment of revelation had arrived at last. The revelation before the resolution. And Joey could feel it in his gut. It was now or never. Because he now had the right listener, and it was the right occasion. So he shifted in his seat and sighed slowly, then said, All right, hear this. My dad, my biological dad, is serving a life sentence at the Spanish Town prison. Long story. My biological mom is in a mental facility in Kingston. Longer story. Trust me. All right, so I'll just say it this way. My biological mom had been suffering from bipolar disorder and then bipolar disease without treatment for many years until... Turn right into Tavares Lane, Joey interjected. But then he felt compelled to remain silent, and did so, all the while, gazing internally. Until what, Joey? Brian's voice was only a vague echo in Joey's head now. And Angel Saintiana paused at this point in telling her story. Then she said, Faithful audience, here comes the disclosure of the long-anticipated closing moment of Chapter 1 that I had promised you. She paused again, and was not smiling. And at that moment, my two closest neighbors, Guardian Angel Gen Rev and Messenger Angel Rev Gen, with their beautiful wings gracefully flanking me, shifted simultaneously to the edge of their seats. The same thing I had done just a moment earlier. What to say of the rest of the vast celestial gathering, most of whom were not seated at all? And yes, I did have a more fidgety and excited demeanor than the angels expressed, perhaps being that I was and would remain a human being. Though maybe that would be so until sometime in the not-too-distant future, which could be, say, maybe sometime in your present day, dear reader. Jamai felt a chill run through his hungry, weary, unwashed body, having so far read this cryptic statement being made by his godfather. Yet Jamai had no other inclination now other than to continue reading what this rather very weird pastor was saying on the current page of the book titled, Stories Angels Tell. Such as, Patient reader, I know you won't put this book down now. Just as I, too, was keenly tuned in as Angel Saintiana continued captivating us, saying, Joey answered Brian in a low, rather melancholic voice, saying, My mom never got professional help until she physically abused a boy I know, a boy named Mark Mackenzie. My own flesh and blood. Brian scratched his nose and then his head. Wait, who? Your brother from another father? I didn't know you had a brother, Joey. No, I only have one sibling, my little sister. Brian said in a low, gentle voice. Really? You had a sister all along, bro? Joey nodded. Then to ease Brian's growing confusion just a little bit, he mumbled. It's me. This time Brian exclaimed. Wait, what? You are your own sister. Joey shook his head disdainfully. Brian had sounded more ridiculous than incredulous. Of course not, stupid. Joey finally snapped. He then breathed out slowly, his eyes becoming grainy and blurry, and he was still trying to avoid meeting Brian's shocked face in the mirror, who now said, So, are you telling me that you are actually that boy? Mark? Yep, Joey said. Then he added, I was Mark Mackenzie. Until when? Until 9 years ago. For real, bro? Brian seemed genuinely baffled. Joey rubbed his Mackenzian face, pondering deeply and silently for a long moment, during which he thought back to a decade ago in Rage Avenue, East Kingston, to that sad moment in that dark back room. That bittersweet moment, when, just after the two adults who found him and told him they were conflict resolvers and asked him if he would like to become one too, and he had not replied, and the woman had then said, "Remain where you are, Mark. Okay, good boy." And he didn't know whether to attack them or cry or both. He had wanted to hurt someone badly, just as he was hurting. And that was all because a woman was in the house jail with him who wasn't his mom. But then two men in white coats and holding a gurney and a medical kit rushed into the room and began inspecting, treating, and preparing him on the gurney, all in less than a minute. And then as the medics were about to wheel him out of the room, the polite woman loomed over him, and locking her sympathetic eyes on his, she whispered, "You don't need to be afraid anymore, Mark. Everything will be all right." And then he shuddered even though he was pinned down, for he had then remembered it all too clearly that was exactly what his mom had said to him just before she. Joey, are you okay, bro?" Joey heard Brian's intrusive voice from somewhere in the mental distance. Then, trying to rub away the messy memory with his hands, Joey muttered, "Yes, I'm good now. Much better than a decade ago. Because I was physically abused by my biological mother and left to die inside our house, in a jail room in our house, as I used to call it. She had beaten me into a state of unconsciousness inside the dark jail room. At our home sweet home, of all places." Joey was now staring into his past, present and future, while still lamenting in a low, coarse voice, as if only to himself. "The Mark who I was, later got transformed into someone else. Yes, Mark, the boy who a decade ago, at the age of 10, did not yet know that his own mother, Jen Senilia, left him to die inside a dark room at home, until he was later found by police and social workers, naked, famished, and bleeding in the dark room. Mark, that boy, who was then taken away from Kingston to Simple City years later to become somebody. That Mark, who a lot of people had said would never find love and purpose in life. The preteen Mark, who no one in Manchester, except my adoptive parents, actually knew existed. Mark, the problem child whose own mother had wanted dead. That Mark, the past me. But thankfully, I was found by those police officers who had been duly informed by good neighbors. Long story short, 2 years later, my adoptive parents wanted to erase my dark past, so they changed my full name, with my permission, to Joey Simpleman through the Jamaica Registrar General's Department. You know, that whole deed poll thing. Brian was silent a long while, just staring ahead and rocking with the rhythm of the ride. Now he shook his head slowly, saying, "Wow, that's messed up, bro." Joey agreed with only a heavy sigh, and they both remained silent. And Joey decided to win the silent contest. Until. "Not so messed up that you go mute on me, bro," Brian said. But his bassy voice was just an echo in Joey's awareness again. Then Joey finally returned to the present moment and noticed a bad mixture of curiosity and amusement plastered all over Brian's narrow face, and couldn't restrain his rising anger. "Yes, Brian. I know. It's messed up. Listen, man. I can't look into a mirror and not see Mark staring back at me. I can't look into a window glass or a device screen and not see Mark looking terrified back at me. Even in water, I see my 10-year-old reflection crying out for help. So I often talk trash about Mark. To myself. In my bedroom mirror. All because I want to separate myself from my dark, ugly past. And I'm afraid of who I will become next. Because I don't really know this Joey Simpleman I am. And look, I know I sound crazy to you. But it's my testimony of salvation, which I now feel free to share with you and maybe the church. Soon." Breathing heavily, Joey then pointed a stiffened finger at Brian's head. "But don't ever let me regret telling you my experience personally. I'm dead serious, Brian." Brian replied calmly. "Come on, Jay, seriously? You're safe with me, brother." Then he chuckled. "It's just that I couldn't find any simple man resemblance, and I often thought about it. You're not as good looking as a simple man, you know." Then he laughed out loudly and glanced back at Joey. "Nothing personal. Joey Simpleman, I have your back. Just chill, preacher." Joey remained silent. Then, after several seconds of peering out the side windows at the scanty two-way traffic, his face finally relaxed. "Turn left into Bolt Avenue, then stop at gate 22, he ordered. But immediately, Brian's face flashed incredulity. "What? No, bro. Bolt Avenue? That's a dangerous place to be at this time of day." Joey said nothing. Then, checking the mirrors to turn left, Brian said, "Okay, my friend, let's go get your grace."